Hi there. Let's look at this question on percentages, alright? At a shop, the price of a printer is 40% of a computer. So it looks like we are comparing two items in this question, correct? A printer and a computer. Now what do we know about them? The price of a printer is 40% of a computer. Whenever we are comparing two items or more using percentages, there's one very important thing to know, and that is to find the item that we are comparing the something against. This item will be taken as 100%, and anything that we are comparing with this will be measured in terms of this item. Okay, and we'll see what I mean in a while. Now, how do we know what this item is? Well, this item that we are comparing something against always appears after the word of. So reading this sentence again, the price of a printer is 40% of a computer. So can you find the item that we are comparing against? Here's the word of, correct? And what's the item that comes after it? The computer, right? We'll start by drawing a model to represent the price of the computer and label this as 100%. Next, because we know the price of the printer is 40% of this means that the price of the printer is 40% of 100%. So we'll draw a shorter model to represent the price of the printer and label this as 40%. So far so good? Reading on, the next sentence tells us that Mrs. Tan bought one printer and one computer each, and she bought it at a discount of 15%. But what does this mean? Let's look at the computer first and see what percentage of the price of the computer Mrs. Tan ended up paying. Since the price of the computer is going to be 100%, 15% less would just mean that she paid 100% minus 15%, which is 85% of the price. Now what about the printer? Here's the tricky part. Earlier on, we measured the price of the printer in terms of the price of the computer. Remember? We know that the price of the printer is 40% of the price of the computer. Now, to find out how much she paid in terms of the computer's price after the discount, we'll take 85% of the price of the printer. Okay? And to calculate that, we'll take 85 over 100 and multiply it by 40%. And this gives us 34%. Following so far? Let's think about this. 34% is really just a proportion of the price of the printer as compared to the price of the computer. Okay? With that, congratulations! You're just done with the most difficult part of solving the problem. Reading on, the next sentence tells us that Mrs. Tan paid a total of $1,904. So in other words, we know that 85% of the computer price that she paid and 34% of the computer price that she paid for the printer adds up to a total of $1,904. So all we need to do now is to add up the percentages and equate it to 1904. What do we get when we take 85% plus 34%? Do you get 119? Since 119% of the computer price represents 1904, we can find out how much 1% represents by taking 1904 and dividing it by 119, correct? And looks like 1% of the computer price represents $16. Now that we know that, it's time to answer the question. How much money did Mrs. Tan save on the two items because of the discount? To solve that, we'll need to look at the total amount of discount that Mrs. Tan enjoyed in terms of the computer's price. So looking at the computer, we know that she enjoyed a 15% discount, correct? And since the price of the computer is 100%, 15% discount will still mean 15% of the price. But what about the printer? We know that the price of the printer is 40% of the price of the computer, correct? And earlier on, we found that Mrs. Tan paid how much? 34% of the price in terms of the computer. So far so good? So this tells us that the amount of discount that she enjoyed for the printer in terms of the computer's price must be 40 minus 34, 6%. Following so far? And knowing this helps us to find the total savings in terms of the computer's price. 15% plus 6% gives us 21%. And since we know that 1% of the computer's price is $16, to find how much 21% of the computer's price is, we simply take $16 times 21. And this gives us an answer of $336. And that's the total amount that Mrs. Tan saved on the 2 items. Problem solved. Thank you for watching this Practical Math video. Before we go, don't forget to try out more questions in Practical and keep your math skills shiny. See you soon!